Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the recent LA wildfires.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at this news article that really focuses on the impact these fires have had on celebrity homes and,
Right.
some of those big landmarks around LA.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's kind of what captures our attention when you see,
Exactly.
a famous person's house is on fire.
It just hits different.
It does.
It's like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
This article, it starts out with the just massive scale of this disaster.
Right.
Thousands of structures completely leveled and tens of thousands of acres burned across LA County.
Yeah, reading that, it's hard to even grasp how much damage that actually is.
It's just like a number.
It's just a number.
But then when you see the pictures,
right?
It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's easy to forget, too, that there's a human cost.
Of course.
The article mentions at least 24 confirmed deaths.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. And,
yeah.
This article doesn't get into the individual stories, which I
Yeah.
think is probably a good thing in this case. But
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely need to take a moment and acknowledge those folks and the lasting impact this has on families and
the whole community.
a community. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think we should be honest here.
Okay.
What really grabs us about these stories is the celebrity angle.
Oh, of course. You see names like Anthony Hopkins.
John Goodman?
John Goodman? Heidi Montag. And it's like,
And you're just like, wait a minute.
I know these people.
What?
I don't know them personally, but,
Right.
You
feel like you do.
It's that parasocial relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a weird psychological thing.
It really is.
Where you feel connected to these people.
Right, and so when something bad happens to them, it's like, oh, no.
Like it happened to your friend.
Yeah. Like, what's going on?
And this article has some crazy stories like Miles Teller's wife wishing she'd saved her wedding dress.
Oh, yeah.
The Hadid's childhood home burning down years after they'd already sold it.
Oh, wow.
It's just crazy stuff.
That's why. And you see this theme, too, right? Like, it seems like every year these fires rip through Malibu.
Right.
And you have to wonder, like, why are people still building these huge houses in these risky areas? Like, is there some disconnect between their wealth and how prepared they actually are for when a disaster hits?
Yeah. I mean, are we prioritizing, the view over safety? Like, what are the trade-offs we're making here?
Yeah. And with climate change, wildfires are only going to get worse.
Exactly.
So it's something to think about.
For sure. Okay. So we've talked about people.
Uh-huh.
And specifically these celebrities and how they've been impacted.
Right.
But it's not just about fancy houses,
Right.
The article also talks about some historical landmarks that were lost.
Totally. It's like they're gone forever.
I know.
And you can't replace those.
So, for example, Will Rogers State Historic Park.
Oh, yeah. The home of the famous actor.
I know.
It's just gone.
It's completely gone. And it was such a significant place,
right.
culturally speaking.
Yeah.
For the whole area.
A piece of history just wiped out.
And then there's Palisades Charter High School.
Ooh.
I mean, if you're a movie buff.
You know that school.
You know that school. I mean, it's been in Teen Wolf, Carrie, Freaky Friday.
All the classics.
All the classics. And now, classrooms, bungalows, the baseball field, it's all gone.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's got to be tough for the students.
Yeah.
And just,
For anyone who loved those movies.
Right. Like a little piece of movie history.
Gone. And then, to add insult to injury, the Topanga Ranch Motel.
Oh, yeah.
Was originally built by William Randolph Hearst back in 1929.
Wow.
Was also destroyed.
Oh, no.
I know. And for those who don't know, Hearst was a huge deal. Like a powerful newspaper guy.
So this motel had a real connection.
Shaped American media.
To the past.
Exactly. And now.
It's gone.
Poof.
Wow. It really makes you think about how fragile everything is.
It does.
These landmarks, they ground us. They connect us to history.
Right.
And when they're gone, it's like we all lose something.
It's true. And, on the topic of loss.
Yeah.
This article brings up insurance.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this quote from Tyler Perry.
Uh-huh.
And he's understandably, I think, outraged about insurance companies potentially canceling people's policies in these high-risk areas.
Well, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, these companies have been collecting premiums from these people for years.
Right.
Profiting off that risk.
Right.
But then when the risk becomes reality,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, we're out.
See?
Yeah. It's a tough situation.
It really is.
Especially with climate change, making these fires more frequent. It's like, are these insurance companies even going to be able to keep up?
Right.
It's a huge question.
It is, and it kind of makes me think about my own insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Like, am I covered?
Right. Are you in a fire zone?
Yeah, am I in a fire zone?
Do you have enough coverage?
Do I have enough coverage?
It's worth checking.
It really is.
It's not just about, your stuff.
Right.
It's about your peace of mind, too.
That's true, having that security.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot here today. The scale of this disaster, the stories of loss,
right?
These landmarks that are gone forever.
Yeah.
And even this whole insurance issue.
It's a lot.
It is. But we've got more to unpack
okay.
in the deep dive.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Okay, I'm ready.
We'll be right back. Before the break, we were talking about Tyler Perry and how upset he was about the insurance situation.
Yeah, like, are they going to cover these homes or not? It's a big question.
Right. And it's interesting. This article also looks at a bunch of different celebrity reactions to the fires. And it's really kind of fascinating to see how different people deal with this kind of devastation.
It's true. Some of them just kind of state the facts,
Right.
Like Melissa Rivers just said, okay, my house is gone.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's like that.
Others are more emotional about it.
Yeah.
Like Cameron Matheson, he was talking about losing everything,
Wow.
down to the clothes on his back.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really like a microcosm of how we all cope with grief and loss.
It is, isn't it?
Some people are just, more matter of fact.
Yeah.
And others are just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that, even these celebrities,
Right.
with all their money and stuff,
Right.
they're still vulnerable.
They are.
These forces of nature.
It's a great equalizer.
It is. They experience the same fear and uncertainty and loss as anyone else.
Absolutely.
And speaking of different reactions,
Yeah.
the article mentions Miles Teller's wife, and she actually found a little bit of humor in the situation.
What was it?
She was mostly upset about losing her wedding dress.
Oh, wow.
Which, I get it.
Yeah, that's irreplaceable.
It is. But it's just interesting how even in the midst of,
right,
tragedy, people find a way to cope.
Finding a little bit of light in the darkness.
Exactly.
It's inspiring.
It is.
Yeah.
And, the article also points out that a lot of celebrities were in the evacuation zones.
Oh, yeah.
But thankfully their houses were spared.
Right, like Howie Leonard,
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Danny Lee Curtis, even Vice President Harris.
Yeah. You think about it.
It's so random.
It is. It's like one house is completely gone, and then
one next door is fine.
Totally fine.
It's crazy.
And even if your house survives, you still have to evacuate.
Right.
You still have that fear of losing everything.
That uncertainty must be so stressful.
Absolutely. And speaking of uncertainty,
Yeah.
the article talks about James Wood's experience.
Oh, yeah. What happened there?
Well, initially, he thought his house was gone.
Oh, no.
I know he even posted these emotional videos.
Really?
Oh, yeah, of the fire, engulfing his neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
But then,
what happened?
a couple days later, he posts a video showing his house pretty much untouched.
What?
I know. He called it a miracle.
Wow, what a roller coaster.
It really is.
I mean, talk about emotional whiplash.
It just shows you how chaotic these events are. The information is changing constantly.
Right.
And you're going back and forth between hope and despair.
Absolutely. And it just goes to show you the power of perspective, right? Like what one person sees as a total loss, another person might see as a total victory.
Even if they went through the same thing.
Exactly.
That's wild. The article also talks about how these fires affect different people within the same community.
Oh, right.
Like Chet Hanks,
Yeah.
Tom Hanks' son, he mentioned that the neighborhood he grew up in was burning.
Oh, wow.
But it sounds like the Hanks family home itself was okay. But it's an important point, right?
It is, because, we tend to think that disasters affect everyone equally.
Right.
But that's not really true.
It's not, no.
It depends on how close you are to the fire.
Right.
The type of construction your house has. Your access to resources, Yeah. Even just plain luck.
It's crazy.
It really is. So even though a community might experience a tragedy together, the losses and experiences can be vastly different.
Absolutely. And we've been focusing on these celebrities, but we can't forget about all the regular folks.
Of course.
Who lost their homes and their businesses.
Their livelihoods.
Their livelihoods, exactly. And, the article mentions the Real Inn.
Oh, yeah.
Which was this popular seafood restaurant in Malibu.
I've heard of that.
It's completely gone.
Wow.
And then there's the Malibu Feed Bin, which was this pet supply store that had been around since 1966.
Oh, no.
It's just gone.
That's sad.
It is. And it's more than just the economic impact.
Yeah.
It's the loss of these community gathering places.
Exactly. Places where people have memories.
Yeah. And it's just a reminder that the true cost of these fires goes way beyond what we see in the headline.
Absolutely. It ripples through the community for years.
And as we wrap up this part of the deep dive,
okay,
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the psychological toll of these events.
Yeah, because even if you didn't lose your home, even if you weren't in the direct path of the fire, there's still that fear and uncertainty.
The trauma.
And, having to evacuate.
Disrupting your life.
Yeah. It's a lot to deal with.
It is. And, we talk about the physical scars.
Right.
But we also need to think about these invisible scars.
Absolutely. The anxiety, the vulnerability, the constant threat of future fires.
Right.
It's a burden that these communities carry.
It really is.
Long after the flames are gone.
And on that note, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some potential solutions.
Oh, good.
What can we learn from this disaster?
Yeah.
And are there ways to maybe create a more resilient future?
Let's find out.
So we've talked a lot about the devastation from these fires.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It really is, but I'm wondering, amidst all this destruction, are there any glimmers of hope?
Well, I think it's easy to feel overwhelmed, by the scale of the problem.
Yeah.
But there are definitely people out there, individuals and organizations who are working hard to address this.
To help.
Yeah, both in terms of the immediate response and, long-term solutions.
So speaking of immediate response, the article mentions FEMA.
Right, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
What exactly do they do?
Well, they're kind of like the coordinators, for federal assistance. So they provide resources and support to the people and communities that have been affected.
Okay, so in this case.
Yeah, FEMA Administrator Dean Criswell, she said that they're actively monitoring the situation.
Okay.
And President Biden has already approved federal funding to help people who have been impacted by the fires.
That's good to hear. But beyond those immediate efforts, what about long-term solutions?
Right. How do we prevent this from happening again?
Or at least make it less devastating?
Exactly. Well, this is where things get tricky.
Okay.
Because we need a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
One that addresses a bunch of different issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, we're talking about climate change, urban planning, and individual responsibility.
Okay. So let's start with climate change.
All right. Well, it's pretty clear that climate change is a major factor here.
Right.
I mean, rising temperatures, longer droughts, and these shifting wind patterns, they all create the perfect conditions for wildfires.
It's like a tinderbox.
Exactly. And unfortunately, these trends are only going to get worse.
So what can we do about it?
Well, in the long run, we need to address climate change globally.
Right.
Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, transition to more sustainable practices.
Okay, but that's such a huge problem.
It is.
What can we do on a more local level?
Right. Well, the article mentions urban planning.
Okay.
And that plays a big role, too.
How so?
Well, as cities grow, they often expand into these wildland areas.
Okay.
And that creates what's called the wildland-urban interface.
The what?
The wildland-urban interface. Basically, it's where the city meets the wilderness.
Okay.
And that increases the risk of fires.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because you have more people living closer to flammable vegetation.
Right, and it makes it easier for those fires to spread.
Exactly. So it's not just about fighting fires. It's about being smart about where and how we build.
Okay, so what can we do?
Well, we need smarter urban design that incorporates things like fire-resistant building materials and landscaping practices.
Like what?
Well, for example, there are guidelines for creating defensible space around homes.
Defensible space?
Yeah, basically it's a buffer zone.
Oh, okay.
Around your house that's free of flammable stuff.
Okay.
Using fire-resistant plants and clearing out dry brush.
So it's like creating a barrier.
Exactly. And then there are also fire-resistant building codes that can be adopted.
Like what kind of codes?
Well, things like requiring fire-resistant roofing materials and ember-resistant vents.
Ember-resistant vents.
Yeah, because sometimes those embers can fly through the air and start fires in main homes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's really a combination of individual actions and larger policy changes.
Working together.
Exactly. And individual responsibility is a big part of this, too.
Okay.
Homeowners in fire-prone areas need to be proactive about protecting their properties.
So what can they do?
Well, clearing brush is huge.
Yeah.
Maintaining that defensible space, having an evacuation plan, and just being aware of fire weather conditions.
So it's a collective effort.
It is.
Individuals protecting their homes, communities implementing smarter building practices, and governments addressing climate change.
It all works together.
Yeah, it sounds like we have the tools and the knowledge
to
create a safer future.
We just need to use them.
It's a commitment.
It is a commitment.
And I think, as we wrap up this deep dive into the LA wildfires, it's clear the devastation is immense.
It is.
We've seen the losses, heard the stories.
The heartbreak.
But I'm also struck by the resilience of the human spirit.
Absolutely.
And that potential for positive change.
We can't give up hope.
Right. And that brings us to a final question for you, dear listener.
Okay.
As climate change makes these events more and more frequent, how do we balance that desire to live in these beautiful but risky areas
with the potential for such devastating loss?
Right. It's about retreating or finding ways to coexist with nature.
To adapt,
but also respect its power.
It's a tough question.
It is. It's one that we all need to think about.
Yeah.
And if this deep dive has sparked something in you, maybe you want to get involved.
Yeah.
Support fire relief efforts. Find organizations that are working towards wildfire prevention.
Absolutely.
Even small actions
can make a difference.
They really can.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.